Okay. I'd like to call to order the Town of Fraser's board meeting at 6 o'clock. Can I have a roll call, please?
Katie Fisher,
Adam Quickland,
Peggy Smith.
Julie White,
Louis Gregory.
Katie Souls.
And Brian Cirkvenik. I'd like to request a motion to approve the agenda with one change. We'll move the two items on consent agenda into the first component of discussion, possible action.
Great, thank you. I move to approve the agenda with changes.
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
So I requested that these come off for a little bit of a discussion. What, if you all can see where we're changing, the proposal is to change the code, so construction activities.
Katie, we're gonna bring this up later.
Oh,
in
thank you.
discussion,
That was
possible
right. Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Thank
so now we'll move on to open forum, that allows anyone from the audience to approach the mic there and have 3 minutes to discuss anything that is not on the agenda.
Hello,
Hey there. Oh, and let the folks know who you are and if you live in
Yeah.
the town of Fraser.
I'm Nathan Watt. My wife and I are the owners of Vicious Cycle Brewing Company in Fraser here. Been open for 2 years, 10 months. I've got some stuff to give you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not much for public speaking, so bear with me. I'm here basically to talk about, I'm sure you guys all know about what's going on with the wastewater treatment plant and kind of what's going on as far as with the breweries. The town is asking us to collect all of our side stream waste, which is, yeast and hops, essentially. There has been some violations over the last couple of years at the treatment plant for ammonia on their effluent, so their discharge. And the company that they've hired is Tetra Tech, and they have said that is 100% the brewery's fault for these limit problems that they're having with the ammonia. And so I just brought, and this isn't to get into any kind of a debate or anything like that.
Anyway.
Yeah, right. This is just to bring this to light and kind of show some data that we have from Geosyntec, which is the first company that the town hired in 2022, which the earliest exceedance of the limit for ammonia was in 2021 in February. And then Tetra Tech was hired afterwards. So yeah, I'm not going to get into a ton of this. There's some highlighted stuff on the first couple pages. That's all from Geosyntec's report. And essentially, it just lays out that the wastewater treatment plant has a daily load capacity of 5,600 pounds of BOD, which is biological oxygen demand, which hops and yeast are part of that. Same as what we put down the toilet. That's also BOD. And so if you want to go to the chart here, this was laid out from Geosyntec. And basically, it's from 2017 to 2022. And it shows where kind of those spikes were on the BOD. Now, Tetra Tech has basically said the BOD is the problem. And that's what's causing all of this. And it may be so, honestly. I don't run a wastewater treatment plant. I don't know a lot about all that. But when you look at that chart, you can see that the spikes are always around that December, January, February period, which is when the violations occurred in 21, 22, and 24. So it was December, January, and February that there were problems in those 3 years. And so I just wanted to show that because with the 5,600 pound, daily permit limit, if it's above 80%, which is 4,450 pounds, the wastewater treatment plant has to report that to the state. And that's when they have to start planning for an upgrade. But we haven't come even close to that. I mean, maybe 66, 70%, is what we've kind of come to on that.
that is the 3-minute warning. So
Is it really?
you could, yeah. if
Good
you could-
Lord.
I'll give you another,
Go a little bit.
30 seconds if you can.
If
kind
you
of
look at
grab-
the other charts, this is from the wastewater treatment plant, and this shows the breakdown of like a 30-day average and a 7-day average for every month. And none of those numbers are even close to like the 4450, let alone the 5600. The big one is the last couple sheets. This is broke down for every day, and it shows what the BOD levels were around like Christmas through like January 6th for the year 2023. 2024, which is the violation was in January of 2024. And you can see the 7-day average is pretty elevated, but still not at even the 80% capacity. On the backside of that is the other one from 2022 when it was in December, which is also elevated. That last sheet is the BOD through end of June, all July, and the first part of August, which you can see the numbers there are substantially lower than when those violations occurred for the BOD. Now, we all brew twice as much in June,
I gotta
July, and
cut you
August.
off, Nathan, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But
So I'm just letting you know.
yes, I appreciate this, and it is obviously a hot topic. Maybe we'll make an agenda item for the JFOC meeting, so that
Okay.
all the folks that.
Yeah, I do want to say that we're totally willing to do what the town's asking. I guess the big thing is if there is a problem this winter, then maybe we kind of revisit it like it wasn't the BOD. It might have been the cold, which is what Tetra Tech told us it was.
Mhm.
All right,
So-
well, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for the information.
All right.
Tom Caldwell, Big Trout Brewing Company, Winter Park. I'll just kind of go in support of what Nathan had just talked about. What we see are when these spikes are happening or when there's a lot of tourism in town. If you came to me and said, hey, November, we're having a lot of issues, I would have more likely to believe you because I make a lot of beer in November. I'm not making beer on President's Day weekend. I'm not making beer in Christmas time, and I'm not really making beer much of spring break. At that point, it's all hands on deck, trying to sell as much as we can. And basically, what we see is a lot of money getting thrown at this thing, and we don't really think it's our deal. So as we go into this, because we don't have a choice at this point, we're going to be collecting all of our waste. What we want is transparency. If we make it through the winter and there's any violations, we're going to stop doing this because there's clearly other issues. So I can go on for hours, but I'll just leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Tom. Anybody else in the room? All right, anybody online? Okay. Seeing no hands, we'll keep moving. All right, so next up is a public hearing. So we need to open public hearing. We'll do those after. Is there a motion to open public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Any further
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Barrett, you have the floor.
Good evening, trustees and mayor. The item before you this evening is the Village of Grand Park filing 3A preliminary plat and final plan development plan. So I'll just jump right into this presentation. As usual, it follows the staff report that is in the packet. Applicant / property owner for this development is Grand Park Development LLC. This is located in planning areas 1WA and 1WB within Grand Park. In totality, the proposed land uses include 184 residential units, 248 lodging or hotel units, and a little over 120,000 square feet of commercial space. Grand Park is zoned planned development, and again, this request is for approval of the preliminary plat and FPDP. So here's a map showing the location of the proposed development, essentially everything in red and green. However, with the exception of, if I can get the laser pointer, give me one sec. This parcel here off to the right, that is the recreation center parcel. That's not being modified at all as part of this application, but everything else in red and green are either amended or new proposed development. And this comes from sheet 3, the land use plan in attachment 1 from the packet. Just to orient ourselves better, this is that map that we just viewed, but overlaying on Google Earth aerial imagery to kind of show where this proposed development lies in relation to existing roadways and other existing developed areas in Grand Park. So speaking to the review and approval timeline for this development, as a reminder, June of 2005 is when the overall Plan Development District Plan for Grand Park was approved. FPDPs for this planning area were originally approved back in April of 2006, later amended in August of 2008 for the Village at Grand Park area. And then in January of this year through May is when we had a submittal of this kind of larger application that covered 2 separate planning areas, 1WA as well as 2W, that went through some rounds of review. A public hearing was held before the Planning Commission in May, and ultimately the Planning Commission recommended denial of that application. The applicant then provided a new application in June of this year. It's again gone through rounds of review, a public hearing before the Planning Commission in July, where the Planning Commission did recommend denial of the application at that time, but deferred final action on the preliminary plat to the board. Essentially, today's action, today's public hearing is a continuation of that public hearing before the Planning Commission back in July that has gone through 2 continuances by the Board of Trustees. So again, speaking to that a little bit further, the public notice that was provided for this public hearing was provided back in July. For the July Planning Commission meeting, town staff's interpretation of how our public notice requirements are written in our code is that no further notices are required when there are a series of continuances, as has been the case with this application. So looking at the area as it exists today, going from left to right, you have the medical center that's under construction, the foundry, which is not part of the Grand Park PDD, the 2 Market Street buildings that are under construction, the Grand Park offices and the gas station car wash, and then the Grand Park Recreation Center. And then here is the overall plan for what is proposed as part of this application. So in talking through the various pieces of this, these areas shown in yellow, these are new lots that are not previously part of any prior approvals from back in 2006 or 2008. The blue lots here are lots that were covered by prior approvals, but are being amended or changed slightly in terms of, lot orientation and building uses. And then these areas in orange are parts of Old Victory Road and Grand Park Drive that would have right-of-way dedicated for them. Currently, these roads just are covered by access easements and not dedicated right-of-way. So this development would provide the right-of-way for them. This table was taken straight from the staff report. It summarizes the allowed as well as proposed uses within this planning area 1WA. So the top row is from the 2005 PDD for Grand Park, the maximum allowed uses within 1WA without any density transfers, which density transfers are an allowed mechanism to increase these uses, but not even taking those into account, 230 residential units, 300 lodging units, 140,000 square feet of commercial space. The previous final plan for this area from 2008 was below those maximum uses. 228 residential, 150 lodging, about 120,000 commercial. And then the final row is the uses that are proposed currently with this application, which again would completely amend and supersede the 2008 final plan for the Village at Grand Park. So, in totality, the uses that are proposed here are fairly in line with what was previously approved back in 2008, with really the main difference being fewer residential units in this proposal with more lodging units. I also want to note that the total commercial square footage noted there includes the Fraser Medical Center that is under construction, but it does exclude the Grand Park Recreation Center. So next, I'm just going to speak to the reasons for denial that were contained in Planning Commission Resolution 2024-0702. That was the resolution that the Planning Commission passed back in July that recommended this proposal be denied. The first reason simply dealt with acreage within planning area 1WA being incorrectly tabulated and accounted for, which resulted in 1WA being slightly above 30.3 acres, which is the acreage identified in the 2005 PDD for Grand Park for that planning area. But now with this FPDP and the preliminary plat that we have received and tabulating what's shown on that plat, as well as all other approved plats within this planning area, the total acreage in 1WA, we're basically right at 30.3, just below by a hair, 5/1000 of an acre, but basically for all intents and purposes, right at it. So this reason for denial has been determined to be resolved. The two other reasons for denial 2 and 3 from that resolution, both dealt with planning area 2W.3, which is no longer part of this FPDP. It was roughly this area here shown in dark blue. But again, that's been removed entirely from this application. The applicant did provide a letter dated October 11th, which withdrew this application entirely for the time being. So again, these two reasons for denial are no longer relevant. So just speaking to a few other items, kind of at a high level, the location of the proposed development is very consistent with, the location of planning area 1WA, as shown in the 2005 Grand Park PDD. So, I think we're all kind of familiar with this kind of, horseshoe shape here for 1WA. And the areas in red are what's proposed to be 1WA in this application. Now, there is a small section that's on the other side of Old Victory Road. There's also another small section of 1WA that's located here, which is where planning area 2W was identified in the 2005 plan. However, overall, the locations as shown in this current FPDP are more or less consistent with, both this graphical representation of 1WA as well as the planning area character description for 1WA that's in the 2005 plan. Really, the primary comment on the FPDP at this time is simply to remove this proposed extension of American Willow Drive that's shown in yellow. This was included on previous submittals of the FPDP, primarily to serve the planning area 2W.3 area that is no longer part of this application. And although the road, does have some more regional benefits, it's really not necessary to serve the development that's included in this FPDP. And therefore, staff is requesting that it be removed, and the applicant is agreeable to removing it from this FPDP. So ultimately, town staff recommends that the board approve this resolution with a few proposed edits to condition of approval number 3, which I'll discuss. But I also did just want to talk about, what this resolution is doing and kind of the next steps in this process. So really, if this resolution is approved, the preliminary plat is approved, and therefore the applicant has 1 year to submit a final plat application. And that final plat application is required before any lots can actually be created and platted, through the county land use records. And that has to occur before any new building permits on any of these proposed, lots, proposed uses can be obtained. So the applicant still needs to go through that final plat application process. The other thing that I wanted to speak to is that the resolution does state that the FPDP is also approved, subject to conditions. And really the main condition that I want to talk about is simply the fact that, as town staff has worked through the review and approval of this land use application, the FPDP itself, as well as the civil construction documents that are associated with the FPDP and this proposed development, really have not been reviewed by the town engineer, external review agencies like Mountain Parks Electric, Excel Energy, East Grand Fire District, etc., since spring of this year. April, May timeframe. So town staff anticipates that those reviews would occur as part of the final plat application. But based on the way our code is written, those reviews could occur ahead of a final plat being submitted. So essentially that means, we could continue to review this FPDP outside of a final plat submittal, but still the trigger for any development to actually occur would be that final plat application and approval of the final plat. That concludes my presentation, and certainly happy to answer any questions you will have.
I would like to say, if you guys have been following this in an effort for transparency, Peggy and I have had to recuse ourselves in the past, but it was deemed both by the applicant's attorney and the town attorney that this does not apply to what we spoke against. So we are not recused at this point. So we are open to vote on these.
Great.
What questions do you guys have?
Can you give me a list again of the people that you reviewed this at the final plat? Mount Parks Electric.
Yeah, so Mountain Parks Electric, Cell Energy, East Grand Fire, CDOT. Those are the big ones. Town engineer, so Merrick's review.
Right.
Um,
How long does that normally like? How long is that valid for? Does that expire? Is that why they would have to do it again, or why would they have to do it again?
so they would have to do those reviews again because so it's gone through 2 rounds of review with
Right.
those agencies. Going back to May of this year, there was still a set of comments from those agencies that have not been addressed since this time.
Okay.
More focus on their civil plans, things like utilities, grading, drainage, etc. But I think that the nature of some of those comments could be, if you say make adjustments to your utility layouts or your drainage plan, that could impact, locations of buildings, lot orientations, easements that are required and things like that. So it does affect the FPDP to a degree, as well as part of the FPDP is just overall utility plan, overall grading plan, etc. So those things also do get incorporated into the FPDP itself, which is why they kind of have to be reviewed and approved concurrently.
Okay.
And just the reason why those reviews haven't happened since May is simply to allow town staff to work with the applicant to get closer to yes, just on some kind of the more high level things, acreage, total land uses,
Right.
density, and things like that.
Okay. Understand.
Is the applicant good to speak as well, or is it just a presentation from you?
Yes, and before the applicant presents, I would like to just briefly share the proposed edits to the resolution. Pull that up. So what you're seeing on the screen here, if we could focus on condition of approval number 3, the bolded underlined text is what I would propose to be added, whereas strike through would be removed. And the intention of this is simply to, one, denote that town staff can advance reviews of the FPDP and the civil construction plans ahead of a final plat submittal, if desired by the applicant, as well as that the FPDP may be recorded once all conditions and comments related to the FPDP are satisfied, and then that the final plat can be recorded separately from the FPDP, essentially. So I know there was previous discussion during one of the continuances of this item about town staff's position as it relates to whether FPDPs and plats can be processed and approved independently or separately from each other. And I think to be upfront, after further review in our code, there is some ambiguous language, and really the key piece to lean on is in the application checklist for an FPDP. It states that a preliminary or a final plat is a required submittal item if development is to approve within 1 year. Opens an option, well, if development is not going to proceed within 1 year, an FPDP could be approved separate from a subdivision plat, which has benefits. And I think it is somewhat of an unusual process, but it is a benefit, I view, of the PD district. And the way it's written in our code existed prior to 2018. 2018 is when a kind of comprehensive rewrite occurred. There was additional sections and additional detail in the old version of the code that again spoke to processes where FPDs and subdivision plats could be approved and recorded separately.
I'm a little confused here. Why is it necessary? What's the advantage of approving them separately? It seems like they should be approved together, and this should go before the planning commission and then come back to the board for final approval, right? We get another bite of the apple with all the information that's germane to this development.
Yeah.
It seems like I'm not sure I understand why we would go ahead and approve the FPDP now without a final plat.
So I'll speak to maybe what the advantages are from the perspective of the applicant, certainly. One is that the FPDP, as currently written in our code, does not have a duration of approval. Once approved and once recorded, an FPDP does not expire. A final plat, on the other hand, has a duration of approval of 5 years, subject to extensions, which essentially means that with the final plat, those lots must actually be platted and recorded and therefore created within 5 years, and building permits, obtained for development on those platted lots within that time frame. I think the approval of the FPDP gives the applicant assurance that they are allowed to build the development that is proposed in the FPDP, subject to the timeline of the platting process, which could go quickly, could go more slowly, depending on market conditions, their own demand, their own timelines, as well as provisions of things like public infrastructure required to serve the development within that subdivision plat. Our development improvements agreements are tied to the platting process, if that makes sense. So I guess also to answer your other question, I do think it would be appropriate if the applicant proceeded with review and desire to record the FPDP ahead of a final plat submittal. I do think it would be appropriate for that to go back to the planning commission and board for approval, given how this process has gone over time, the changes that has been done. We could not consider it a new application per se, but have it go through the public hearing and approval process one more time before being recorded, if that makes sense.
The final plat.
Well, if it's concurrent with the final plat, that would absolutely go before the planning commission and the board again, as required by code. I guess I'm speaking to this process where if the applicant sought to record the FPDP ahead of a final plat application even being submitted, I think it would be appropriate for that FPDP, before being recorded, go back through the public hearing process.
Okay, so that doesn't make any sense to me why we
Okay.
would go ahead and approve an FPDP now if they're gonna have to bring it back to the planning commission and the board for approval later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm confused too.
Why would we approve it separately now?
I think the intent of the way this resolution is written is to give the applicant assurance that the town is agreeable to this development proposal as it substantially meets the requirements of the 2005 Grand Park PDD and applicable provisions of town code, but recognizing that this FPDP may not be recorded until additional rounds of review occur and approval is granted by town staff.
So if we approve the FPDP tonight, but then there's what changes, then it comes back? Like, I guess I don't understand why if we approve it tonight, why we wouldn't record it.
We would not record it if this resolution is passed because it still requires additional review by town staff, external referral review agencies, et cetera.
Got it.
So we approve it, but it's not recorded. until
Correct.
all that is
Okay.
Correct. And
Okay.
and those reviews can occur independently from the final plat submittal. And the final plat submittal itself would go back to the planning commission and the board for approval.
Got it.
So is this, the purpose of this gyration is because he has a client that wants to have some assurances that we're moving forward with this concept?
I think that's certainly part of it. Certainly the applicant could speak to that if they so choose. I would also add that currently the Market Street buildings are not on platted lots. And certainly those buildings need to be placed on platted lots before certificates of occupancy are granted. Which certainly, given the timeline of construction, it's not imminent, but certainly before that occurs, those lots should be platted.
So if we approve it tonight, can the applicant file to have it recorded? Or does that have to be the town that would file to have it recorded?
The town must sign off. Specifically, Brian, as the mayor, signs off on all recorded FPDPs or subdivision plats. And town staff would not have Brian sign this FPDP until it is ready to do so.
If we felt the need for the updated current traffic study, would that be covered in your language here?
It would. I would also note, so there's an overall traffic impact study for Grand Park that dates from 2013. Slightly. However, I will note that the applicant did provide a more focused traffic impact study back in February as part of earlier submittals of this application. Now, granted, what that traffic impact study analyzed was a greater intensity of development as earlier proposed in previous versions of this application. And now certainly the intensity of uses has been pared back. So I think, that the traffic study that was received in February is not necessarily relevant to this application, but I think it could be reanalyzed given the uses that are proposed here, certainly. And I guess just a more general comment, I believe the way that condition of approval number 3 is written does give us broad flexibility if future comments pop up in the review of the FPDP, that the applicant must address those. It doesn't limit us to the comments that currently exist at this time.
Any other questions for Garrett? All right. Would the applicant like to speak?
Hi. My co-host, I always get screwed up on this.
Maybe while Layla's setting up, I can touch on a few things. Clark Lipscomb for the record, Grand Park. And you had lots of bites at the apple, by the way, Lewis. I know you like those, but there's been lots on this one. This is advancing economic development, jobs, growth It's been long planned for this area. Is a far reduced plan from what was originally submitted, and what we plan. We will be coming in with additional plans at a later date as this project progresses. As for the questions associated with the review agencies, I suspect, having dealt with those review agencies for some 25 years now, the comments that we received on the first two submittals will be identical to this, only pared back because it's a smaller area. What you're seeing here is a portion of what was submitted previously with the withdrawals that we're making or that were made. So I expect that Xcel Energy, we already have gas in that development, Mountain Parks Electric, these are all just cursory reviews that we regularly deal with. And their staff memos are pretty standard stuff that we deal with. So just want to touch on that as to how that process works. And then finally, as for the FPDPs, remember that PDDP is a preliminary, I like to call it a preliminary plan. It's a plan development district plan. I like to call it a PPD, a preliminary plan development plan, but it's preliminary. And so the final plan takes that preliminary bubble zoning and sets it in stone. And that's why it's done independently of the plat process. And we have traditionally and historically run them concurrently, but usually it was because we were going on a project immediately. Very important on this project, much like the rest of the village, this will be phased. And it's in the interest of the town to phase it as well. And as we have users for lots, the plats will get recorded for those individual lots. So there will be a subsequent final plat being submitted at some point, and it'll have a phasing plan with it. And what that does is set us into a position to be able to deliver things like medical centers when there's a need for a lot of that nature, or a bowling alley theater as a good example that probably wouldn't be there if we didn't have this type of arrangement already set up. So I think it's a good structure. I think it's a pretty clean structure. It certainly worked for a very long time. And I hope that with what we paired it back to, it gets all of this board support, as I know the former boards that I've dealt with very much wanted to see economic development, sales tax revenue growth, and job creation in our community. And that's what this project stands to try to do for us. So thank you. For Layla.
Knocked around. Good evening, Layla Rosales with Terracina Design. Thanks so much for taking our look at our application today. I'll be brief because Garrett did a good job, and some of you have seen this many times. And so this thing is always lagging. La la la. Wi-Fi at its finest. There we go. This is the PDD or a portion of the PDD for Grand Park. It's basically everything east of the railroad tracks. And really all this depicts is, planning area 1 or 1A, WA as 30.3 acre, just really depicts what's permitted within this PDDP in these planning areas, which Garrett already briefly shared with you. You have to talk slower or move buttons faster. Wow, this is quite the lag today. Yeah, it's very slow today. All right, I'm gonna do the next one right now so that it'll catch up. Right. So again, what we're looking at tonight, this is really just a pretty picture, right, of what Garrett shared as it relates to the entirety of this area east of the railroad tracks for Grand Park. So again, we're on the southern end here, the village. I know you're all aware of what it is we're looking at tonight and know the area. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of a context map, just as a refresher for those who may not remember. I still didn't get it.
That's too bad. Your magnetic personality.
right?
I have a question.
Something, yeah.
So I know that the people of Fraser are gonna wonder, and we work for them. How are we supposed to make sure that the Market Street buildings don't happen with this? So they're not sitting there empty. I just know that if we approve this plat, there's gonna be questions from the constituents of Fraser, like, how do we approve this when that is still there? I know it's a totally different subject, but how will we make sure that that doesn't happen with this?
Can I finish my presentation and let Clark answer that when I'm done?
Sure.
Do you mind? That's definitely more of his answer than mine, if you don't mind.
No.
Okay. So here is a blow up of the area that we're talking about today. And again, we are looking at fewer residential lodging and commercial units that are allowed in the PDD. The area that we're talking about here, I want to, highlight a couple things. Leland Creek in green here that kind of cuts this picture in half, and the floodplain and the wetlands associated with that. One of the reasons why this thing looks a little bit different than what the PDDP did was that back when the PDD was done, this floodplain didn't exist. And so it's something that was been adopted by the town since then. And so things kind of had to push and pull and move around a little bit with that new constraint put in place since 2005. Oh, I should have done it earlier again, sorry.
Can I ask a question about that floodplain?
Uh-huh.
So it runs across the parking lot at the rec center.
It does.
Did that have to be mitigated, or is that allowed if as long as it's not a building? Are you allowed to have a asphalt structure on across a floodplain?
Yes, in fact, you are. There's a no fill rule. However, Clark Lipscomb for the record. In this case, that floodplain wasn't adopted by the town until after the rec center was built. Okay, and so the FEMA floodplains for the town of Fraser weren't adopted until late 2000s, I think. So,
I mean, I noticed that the Leland Creek has been diverted around that parking lot and runs through the meadow at several places, but I don't know if that was done afterwards or what, but I was just curious as to why, a parking lot was put right across of the creek in the floodplain.
The floodplain came after the parking lot.
and the creek was mitigated with the Army Corps of Engineers and was approved to be that way, Lewis.
Okay.
So a lot of things you don't understand about those kind of things. So always feel free to ask me.
I do understand a lot, Clark. Okay.
All right, so a couple of the changes that I want to highlight tonight that I think are actually positive changes. One is that, again, the Market Street buildings that we were discussing. One of the things that we are looking to do here is to remove a little bit of the parking that's right in front of the Market Street buildings and create a larger plaza, outdoor seating area for outdoor eating, entertainment, those types of things. So that is one change that's occurring with this final plan that does have a direct effect kind of on what's happening on the ground right now.
Go to the next.
I'm gonna go next.
Okay. It's just hard to see. Can y'all see that okay?
There you go.
No, there you go.
There you go.
So this is, and Clark can probably talk to this too, what we're calling the business green, and this is the area right in between, just adjacent to the Market Street buildings, and we're looking to do some outdoor, some entertainment out here, some pickleball courts, potentially an outdoor theater slash, area for concerts in this. So just kind of wanted to give you a visual on some of the things that we're looking to do that are incorporated into this FDP that are positive for the community at large.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the important thing about this concept is kind of fun and exciting, but it actually opens up the Market Street west facing plazas for far superior sun exposure, which the prior plan didn't really accommodate. We think that's a market condition that we needed to address, and this addresses it and provides what really becomes like a central square-like area. It's a business environment. Just so you know that the long brown rectangle is a kind of an outdoor bar venue modeled after a similar one at Crested Butte. That's very popular during the summer, closed during the winter. there's a stage in the middle, on the right side next to, the circle, that's intended to be, an outdoor music venue that hopefully will correlate and relate to an indoor music venue in one of the Market Street buildings, cross our fingers. And then this pickleball thing is really taken off, and it's become quite popular and relative to the restaurant business. And there's a lot of people doing pickleball facilities associated with restaurants and entertainment type spaces, et cetera. And so we thought it was a pretty appropriate use of the space. And then Layla, they're a very creative one, found a concept where we actually turn that into an ice skating during the winter, so that it could be a multi-purpose type facility. Again, very conceptual, but kind of fun stuff. This is the stuff we have fun thinking about and coming up with and trying to figure out how to implement. So pretty neat components that I think really pull that whole thing together and start to link the lawn across from my office down to the bowling alley theater and make that whole thing feel finished while it still is kind of in its early stages.
So Clark, the two squares on either end,
Buildings.
they are 1 story.
No, they're multi-story buildings. And we want them that way, for multiple reasons. But they're first floor, they'll be first floor retail restaurant, commercial. And second, third, fourth, I think we have those at 55, which is just correlates with the overall plan, but they're not designed, Peggy. And so I can speak to what they ultimately would be, but that is the intent of those, is to bookend this green with really an animated, active type environment that's got residential or lodging above. That would be small lodging. If it was lodging, it'd be very boutique-like. But that's the idea of those two square brown spots there. It also, it's a, I was about to say, it's a wind block too. So we get a predominant prevailing wind out of the northwest in this location, and buildings help provide screening from the wind if they're designed properly. So that's the other component.
So there's flexibility because it's basically talking about just commercial doesn't really go into the lodging or the residential in those buildings. So
We have it on the land use of what we have allotted to those lots.
okay.
It's on there.
Okay.
And I
I
think
just
it's
remembered the
residential over
labels.
retail right now,
Yeah.
but there is flexibility within the plan to interchange if we had like I stated, a really cool boutique hotel in Grand Junction 3 weeks ago for a mountain bike race. And it was, it would fit perfectly in one of those buildings and be really cool. So, I think it's about the flexibility that we're trying to create, guys. I think I've told most of you, I don't believe I'll be building all these buildings, right? I'm not building the medical center. I'm helping facilitate it. We've got a hotel deal under contract. I won't be building that hotel. It's a different party. That's part of trying to move this along and get this finished, is to keep that deal moving forward, which you think would be very good for the town.
Absolutely.
So.
Need a hotel.
Speaking of hotels. Ta-da! Again, this is really highlighting a couple of the changes that we're making as part of this FPDP. And one of them is to accommodate this hotel user that I just mentioned, which would be lot 4A. And so you can kind of see, I mean, obviously at squint test, the lots look very similar, but there are kind of some pushing and pulling as well as Grand Park Drive kind of extending alongside of it, which, as you can see on the left there, it didn't previously. So again, just trying to highlight a couple of the exciting changes that are part of this FPDP.
This just speaks to the flexibility that's set forth in the annexation agreement pertaining to these planning area bubbles. And while we're not using these components today, we do think they're important and relevant to this discussion. As we previously had we were actually increasing density in this village area. We thought it was a very appropriate spot for a higher density area, and then therefore reducing density in other areas. So that refers to section 4.2 here, which is the density transfer right. We're not increasing density. We simply transfer it from another area, which theoretically would then reduce that area and add that density here. I'm a firm believer in when you're creating a business residential core like this, that you need critical mass for it to succeed. And that was what that effort was about. We've since removed the density transfer, so there is no density transfer in this plan whatsoever. And right now it's under the density allowed for one WA. And then the other section speaks to the acreage. And I know Garrett touched on the fact that I think the last one was 0.3 or 0.5 acre. It was something small over the planning area bubbles. But the planning area bubbles don't control. The density controls. And the land necessary to develop that density controls. In the case of this project, and we've drawn it too many times, we're hopefully to have this piece finished to make our lives a little simpler. Parking is a key component, guys, and it drives a lot. So when we transfer density in, that in turn makes the parking requirements bigger, right? We put more residential units or more lodging units, and we have to have more parking. And so that obviously enlarges the bubble. There's one constant in our annexation agreement, and that is the planning area 23 acreage. That is 468 acres approximately, minus 4.9, which is the rec center donation. So, and that is planned for in all of our plans. So bottom line is, if you can always move product around, but ultimately at the end of the day, really the development acreage is going to be effectively the same over the whole projects. And they are approximate numbers, and it speaks to that in the PDD. But those points are there just to reiterate the fact that we've removed this density transfer, and we've actually stayed within the planning area acreage. And we'll move on with this approval and go develop the other stuff where it's laid out today. So.
Again, this plan presented tonight is in compliance with the annexation agreement, the PDDP, the land use code. I won't get into the specifics, but land development code as it relates to parking, snow storage, landscape, water and sewer. Actually, Garrett went through these already, so I'm not gonna go through them again, but these were the reasons for denial from planning commission and how we addressed those. And Garrett went through that just fine, so you don't need me to do that. And that's all I've got for tonight. I could leave the pretty picture up if you care to look at it. Well, yeah, comments. That's all I got for tonight.
And if you have any questions, Kate, I think you had a question and I wasn't up here. I apologize. But,
Okay. I understand what's going on. I just wanted to just like in a nutshell. I don't want the people of Fraser to think that we're just approving stuff and it's gonna be left in a shell. Like I want them to know that this is going forward, and or maybe some reassurance to the town that that's something that it's gonna be different than the marketplace.
well,
That makes
Market
sense?
Street, as you know,
Sorry.
wasn't caused by us, but we don't need to get in that debate tonight. And we've been spending an immense amount of time, manpower, and otherwise at Market Street. I would,
I've
a
seen.
lot of people don't recognize that the white buildings have gotten bigger. but-
Yeah, they gotten big.
We noticed.
They're
you know,
getting taller and the roof's on and the steel's out of the way.
Right.
And I mean, all of this stuff's been getting put in. And the storm drain system's completed, and the roofs were actually supposed to be delivered yesterday, and Mother Nature held that up. So we're trying to get these things dried in, get windows in them.
Cool.
And there's a lot of money invested there. So there's your assurance that those will get finished.
Right.
And
I'm talking about more about these ones.
these, these are, this is
gonna be.
this
other
is for
third
final
party.
plan approval to
Correct.
set the groundwork. So for instance, let's say we get the hotel guys to proceed forward with their project. That would be the final plat for that lot. They'll come in and do their process with you guys for building permits, et cetera. I mean, I think, that goes back to the old adage of there's no guarantees on anything anywhere.
Right.
If you permit somebody's home, there's no guarantee that they're going to go finish their home. Right. I think you got to look at the people behind it and what their wherewithal is and what they're doing, and is their business plan solid. And Market Street has been very challenged, obviously, and dusting off old plans has been even more challenging for me. But it's coming along, and I think it's going to be, when it's finished, it's going to be really cool. Our main thing there is figuring out what's going to go in it and who are the users, right? I mean, that's the biggest challenge probably that we face today. We have our timeline and our schedule set forth, and if we get a little cooperation, get that thing dried in, it makes our lives a lot easier. for the
Right.
winter. And, but we're on track for the schedule that I've set forth of October next year for those shell completions are very complicated. And then we'll, hopefully have some users lined up. But I mean, I think that's, there's everything I guess here's the way I would put it. Everything I've ever started here, I've finished, including a 13-year-old underpass process that was painful and not very rewarding and very expensive and had no return on investment for me because it didn't benefit any of our projects, right? So, as you guys know, I'm pretty tenacious, and when we start something, we finish it. And that's always been our track record. And that will always be the case. May take us a little longer than we want, but it'll get finished. So, anyway, that's
perfect. On this side, you might want to take a second to address the public, but I understand what's going on here. And, I think it's a good idea to approve this. Is that a resolution?
I have a question.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Obviously it's like, within your zoning to do whatever, but I'm just curious about the lodging units, the L-shaped building that's kind of on Old Victory. Why there instead of like in lot 14 or lot 15 for hotels?
why there instead of lot 14 or
So
15.
14 and 15 are kind of also
Nice open space behind it.
the ones
Yeah,
west of the
well,
pond.
so I mean, that spot has a really great view to the south of the ski area that
Yeah.
overlooks that floodplain area. It is very open. Brian, years ago, we actually had a deal. The one in Granby went in, ours was kind of linked to that, but we were doing a deal with Wyndham, and it was actually a site they picked. It was a Wyndham hotel. It was actually a mix. It was a Wyndham hotel with a timeshare component, a little different than the Granby deal, but it was concurrent. And that was 08, market changed. But we've always had that spot pinpointed as a logical, good hotel spot. And I think the views are appropriate for it. It's got an exposure and it works well. I mean, quite honestly, some of the stuff's hard to fit in. And that's been one of the challenges. It's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. When you mix in the lodging with the residential and the commercial, and you have all three components that you can play with and bring to market, and you want to do all of them because you think there's a demand for all of them. It's where are they most suited and where do they best fit for the various intended users. My suspicion is the one next to the rec center is the premier site. That one goes first. That's the one that's under contract. And if that one does well, then perhaps this other one, that would probably be more of a limited service. This hotel, different type of model, different profile, but a good question. And there is flexibility within the documents as well to be able to move these various densities around if necessary. Should, we have a user that says, hey, I'd rather do this hotel on this site and we think it's a good plan, we can accommodate that within this overall plan. Doesn't change footprints, the use from y'all's perspective. Just creates some adaptability for potential end users.
So you don't have a user in mind for that particular, that's just a concept at this point.
Not for that spot, but the parcel next to the rec center, Peggy, is under contract. And the flag is, they have the flag awarded. I don't know if they've met with Michael. I don't think they're public as to what the flag is yet, but it's a good flag. We would be very pleased with it. And we like the group that's under contract. They have a good track record and I think it would be a really, if we pull, there's lots of ifs in that world. I'm not a hotelier, so it's just a totally different business, and I don't plan on being a hotelier. So, I'll leave it to those guys, but I like their resume and I like their background and their track record. It's very good.
So I see, there's ADA routes and it looks like sidewalks, but it's kind of hard to read. It's,
Sidewalks.
how big are the sidewalks and?
All the sidewalks in this village area are 8 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet minimum.
I thought I read 8 foot.
There's 5 feet minimum,
Okay.
but we have some that are 8 feet, and there's bigger, obviously in front of Market Street, there would be a much bigger area. So it kind of depends where they're at, but it's 5 feet minimum.
And would you be plowing the sidewalks? Or is that?
So our agreement with the town of Fraser, was changed when you might have been here, when we added the rec center, which is 1W8.2. Prior to that, the town was taking care of everything, to building front, and Jeff, was adamant about changing it to back of curb. So the town is responsible to top back of curb. And we're still working on mechanisms for how sidewalks would get maintained and those sorts of things, whether it's through, like a district programming or commercial owners association, or, there's a number of different ways to do it. So right now we kind of all take care of ourselves. There is an overall structure there, but we all kind of take care of everything ourselves, the bowling alley, theater, rec center, our office, and the medical center will take care of their own stuff. But ultimately, there's got to be a bigger, better coordinated effort. But it's been pretty good. It's actually worked pretty well. But we have just a few buildings right now.
Is your contract with this hotel is contingent on approval of this?
Yeah, this
tonight?
contract's on its fourth extension, new one sitting on my desk right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been rather held up through this whole process. So that was kind of part of the withdrawal, is to try to move that one forward and get this done so that we can get them in a position to go or not go. Right now, they don't have any urgency to have to do anything because it's in my court. So yes, Louis, we can't sell stuff that's not platted. And so we typically are the entity that goes and gets the approvals for most of these groups. The bowling alley theater was case in point. The rec center, they were here with me, but then once we do an FPDP and then a final plat, we have a lot that we can then convey to another developer that's going to go build the buildings.
So this is not a final plat, though, is
This is a final
preliminary.
plan.
Plan.
right.
Yeah.
Final plan.
Yep.
There is a document, preliminary plat. So there was a comment made earlier about the Market Street buildings. I assume they were approved previously and they've been the final plat, everything's been approved with those. What was the comment? That was Garrett.
The final plat just hadn't been recorded, and it needs to get recorded, and we understand that'll get recorded before they're CO'd as part of the
So it's
agreement with the
it's
town.
not been recorded, but it's not.
It's approved. I think I don't even know where the Mylars are right now, but it was all finished and done. I guess we have to find those, but or have the surveyor reproduce them. But no, it was all approved, and so that was in what was 1W8.2 of the village at Grand Park, and part of the approved plats there. It's in a phasing program, and like I said, those buildings, my office, rec center, bowling alley theater, the medical center, all came out of that already approved FPDP and final plat, which is in phases by lot. And what this is doing is amending that final plan and adding a little bit, which was what his color coded building thing showed what was being added. But it's also amending like the hotel site for what's under contract with this hotel group, which is a different configuration. It's adding Grand Park Drive into the final plan, which obviously the town worked with us, and Grand Park Drive's built and it's all there, but it wasn't in the old final plan. So there's just little cleanup things that this also is acting to handle. If that makes sense. Yeah.
So you widened the street, Market Street a little
I did.
with this, but you didn't do anything to Main Street, right?
No, we didn't change Main Street. Market Street, we just, because of what we really would like to do is come in with an entertainment district overlay that you guys would have to approve, that effectively turns Market Street and what we call the business green into kind of a really nice entertainment area where you could go from place to place with your drink if you're drinking, or your kids are outside playing across the street and you're having food on the nice plaza. And increasing that plaza size, we felt it was important to, I actually deepened the parking spots a little bit. I drive a big truck. And so it was an opportunity. There's nothing there. And since we're doing the business green, it just made sense. Hey, let's just create a little bit more deeper parking and create some more flexibility. In a perfect world with the entertainment district, if you're having a special event, you close the street off and it's a street party,
Mhm.
right? And it kind of gets integrated with the Market Street building.
Be a
It'd be
nice
very
spot
cool.
for that.
It'd be really cool.
Be a great spot for it.
Yeah.
So that it just, I mean, it's really tight. I know, everybody knows, we've all been over there at the rec center, and so it looks like you come into the rec center roundabout, that's one way to get in. But then when you leave, it's a right in, right out kind of thing, because you've got an island in the middle of Grand Park Drive. So you kind of, there's a lot of,
I'm not sure what you're talking about the rec. Oh, you're talking about the rec center turnaround at the
Yeah.
front.
turnaround. That's
Right.
one access point to get into the hotel, and then the other one is,
Oh, Peggy, I don't think it's stuck on the hotel footprint that's on there. That's a standard of that particular brand. It's not going to be that. It's
Okay.
going to be custom designed. We're waiting to finish the lot layout.
okay,
Like, for instance, I'm not happy with where that parking's shown by that circle.
okay,
Remember, these are conceptual building footprints
Okay.
and they're set forth for the uses that are
Okay.
there.
Good.
But you still have to go have an architect do the full design.
okay.
And so
And we'll have a say
well,
about that.
your office will be getting the plan. No, actually, it's a B zone. It goes through the B zone review. You'll see the submittals
Okay.
because of the way the PD's written and how the commercial areas work. Isn't that right, Michael? I think that's correct.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I think we've traditionally brought plans in to planning commission,
Okay.
like a B zone district would in Fraser for that. And yes, I would think that's going to be going through the town anyway.
In that same zone, this morning I was there, there's that bottleneck, and you're familiar with it, where right by the car wash. And I took a picture. You got it, Garrett's gonna throw it up there real quick. But it gets really tight, just past the little circle drive, the horseshoe. And heading back towards the car wash, and people are coming and going out. There's that, it's tight. And when there's snow on the side, it's basically comes down to one lane. It was tight for two, and there's room to widen that to the meadow side, the right, between there and that fence. So you can see that
Well,
bottleneck.
a couple of things. Important is one of the reasons these roads are narrow.
Is
And
what's
they were designed narrow. And that,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's pretty, like, I know a lot of communities that have a similar setup. It's for speed control.
And
I
which
actually
is
have talked
okay
to-
until
talk-
it piles of snow on either side, and it
No,
comes down to one lane. and-
Rec center's been there since
Biggest road.
'09 and we
Could
haven't
you
had,
could you please make that a little wider there and utilize some of that space?
that is not my property, but that's the rec center's property, I think, where you're talking about.
No, to the right of that pickup truck, that's your property, I believe.
Uh,
Or it's, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I don't,
really
I would have
close.
to
I
look at the
think
lot,
that
but
little
But
V.
I guess the point I was gonna make, we previously have talked to the rec center about doing some other things through there, and the request has always been, we like it really tight, and because of the speed, because of kids crossing and people coming out, et cetera. So there is logic to it being small and wanting cars to go very slow
Okay,
and be careful, and I would be reluctant to say, yeah, I go widen it, because I don't think, one, the rec center would want that done, and I don't think it would be a good idea for the intended purpose of the rec center. I mean, I think they would
Maybe
actually
that
oppose
could be
it.
something that could be better addressed through snow storage management.
okay,
Just
Yeah.
something we could look at.
something down the road, okay.
Because
Because it's really, it does slow people down.
Well, but even if you park like just.
And my
next
thought
to
is, once
cars,
the
people
hotel
go-
is there, there's a
It's-
potential for a lot more
it's
traffic,
tough.
making that right turn.
True.
And
Well,
that's my thought.
recognized.
As it is, it's not so
You have to
bad,
park
but if
there.
you've got folks
There's a
heading
craft show.
that direction.
Well, I think it's something that I would put on, we get this done and we're working with the hotel guys, then it's certainly when they're working on their site planning and their layouts, I think that's when we talk about that, but I can
Thank you.
95% tell you that the rec center likes it slow and tight, to keep people slow. So just
Okay.
FYI, but I think,
That's
is it mainly a winter issue?
Winter is when it gets really tight. Yeah,
Okay.
that's when it's the worst, because that's just, it gets stuck and you can't see where the curb is, and
Well, we could probably help address some of that maybe with different
Yeah,
stuff.
keep it- Thank you.
Yep.
Clark, what part of the process would the right of ways be dedicated? Is that part of the FPDP recording or is that the plat,
Final plat.
final plat?
Final plat creates the tracks for the rights of ways
Yeah.
and they get conveyed to the town.
How does the board feel about opening it up to the public? I mean, it's public. If we're going to do it, are you guys ready to do it?
Mhm.
All right. Anyone in the room, want to come to the mic? Mr. Quinn.
Colonel Quinn, Town of Fraser. Well, live in Fraser, I guess I should say, to clarify. Earlier tonight, you heard from the owner of the Vicious Cycle, Fraser Brewing Company. Camber wasn't here, but the Fraser Distillery. Part of their issue is we don't have enough usage on the sewer plant. I know you think it's overusage, but we don't have enough. You can ask Joe, the more people we have on the sewer system, the more diluted that water becomes, the more people we have. And that was part of the future plan of Fraser is to develop, get more things going. And I think what Clark's offering now with the hotels and the other buildings that he's looking at, and the tax plans that we put in place on second homes and rental properties, this is what we've been looking for. And I think that you as the board members, you're supposed to be looking out for what's best for us as the residents of Fraser. I think this is something you should approve.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? All right. How about online? I see Deborah Schulman has her hand raised.
Hi, thank you for listening. I just have a comment about the one hotel, I think it was in 1W3. It seems to be pretty far away from the retail and the restaurants. And, and I know that area and, in the winter that can be really, really cold. And so to me, that location doesn't, I'm just commenting on the location as far as perhaps moving it closer over into where the other more developed retail restaurants activities are instead of putting it far away and over next to the residential area. That's my main comment. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Do we have any other hands up? Okay. Well, board,
Okay.
what are your thoughts?
We've taken to close the.
We have to close.
I'd like to
the-
make a motion.
Yep.
To approve resolution 20.
We have to close the public comment first.
Oh, that's right.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now, Katie Souls.
I guess before the motion is made, do any trustees have any objections to these proposed edits?
No,
Which edits again?
and bold right there.
I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2024-1103, approving preliminary plat and FPDP for the Village at Grand Park filing 3A with the shown changes.
I would like to make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't see the urgency to have to approve a final FPDP tonight, since it sounds like it's probably gonna come back anyway for modification. So why are we jumping to approve it?
Well, we can approve it and then we don't file it until the conditions have been met. So
Well,
it
no,
still
but
helps.
there
And
may be
I-
additional,
The
there may be additional.
hotelier has
Buy
the,
it, and you wanted
I
to
can't
know
hear.
if it was gonna actually be something instead of just, you would want a little bit of assurance from them that the town was on board with the idea. Before a hotel comes in and it's like, oh, and then they're the only one standing there without the entertainment district, or you know what I mean? You'd want, if you were gonna look at buying it, you'd wanna know that things are moving forward. I would anyways.
Yeah.
That'd be the reason I would want to approve it tonight.
And I guess to also clarify in the process a little bit, as Clark spoke to, um, e- each of these lots before they are developed as well would need to go through. He mentioned the B zone development permit. That's now called the major site plan review. So the Fraser Medical Center, for example, that went through the major site plan process. That lot was approved under the Village of Grand Park Filing 2 plat and FPDP from 2008. It was envisioned to be commercial space at the time, but then this medical user opportunity arose. It went through the major site plan process before building permits were approved. Major site plans require approval by a public hearing before the planning commission and then approval by the board. Now, our code also speaks to amending FPDPs, and we have another land use application actually coming before the planning commission next week, a project in Rendezvous, where there's an approved FPDP that envisioned commercial uses, and they are now proposing a different user. And town staff identified the appropriate process for that was an amendment to the FPDP. That is a public hearing before the planning commission and approval by the board of trustees before building permits are pulled. So either way, moving forward, we have previously used the major site plan process for projects in Grand Park post FPDP approval, but pre-building permit application. We could do that moving forward for these, or really the amended FPDP process is very similar to the major site plan process. So I think regardless, before anything's actually built, this will come back to the planning commission. This will come back to the board in some capacity.
Okay, so it's sort of a final preliminary PDP.
Yeah, however you want to think
It's
about
not
it. I
really
think,
final.
yeah, it's
Okay.
not the final.
Any other comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Okay,
Thanks to the developers for
yep,
working with us on all this.
yeah.
It's an exciting plan.
I know it's painful, but you've got a really a good plan.
Thank you, board.
Okay. We are going to
Okay.
continue on with discussion and possible action, and we're going to jump up to what was on the consent agenda. So resolution 2024-1101, extended construction hours for Fraser Medical Center.
Yeah. So I asked to have this pulled off for discussion. I know that in Fraser, the folks that lived on Mill Avenue, when the Mill Avenue apartments were being constructed and things were starting super early in the morning, those residents were miserable. They were miserable. And I feel like both of these projects, they do serve a lot of public good, but I believe that the mental health and quality of life of our residents have to weigh in also. And starting at 5:30 in the morning in July is when sunrise is. And we've got people that work and they work nights, a lot of service people. So I am not comfortable. I think with that, we should talk about it. Right now, code has us between the hours of sunrise and sunset, Monday through Friday, and 8 to 6:30, Saturday and Sunday. And this proposed change would be, basically between sunrise and sunset, or 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Sunrise on July 1st is at 5:30 in the morning. Think about where you live. And if there's a big construction project right next to you,
On like our street.
and right, and with no restrictions on weekends.
Yeah.
So that's why I would like to spend a little more time with this, or at least setting a base start time of 7, maybe 6:30. And on those days in July, that would make like a 15.5-hour work day. And I'm sure there'd be people that would do it because they really want the money in the overtime, but it doesn't mean that they'll be safe, making good decisions. And anyway,
Could be two different shifts also.
so
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have to be.
That's how the company.
Right.
I don't know. What do y'all think?
I think in the summer you gotta take advantage of the daylight. I mean, I understand what you're saying, because I've been next to a house that's being built.
Yeah.
But we also have limited time to build homes and projects here because of the weather, so.
Well, I've lived in a construction zone for 25 years out here. And I was the first resident of Rendezvous, so it's really happened around me. And I kind of agree with Katie that, being rational is, nobody is going to want to start work at 5:30 in the morning. I mean, and a lot of these guys come from Denver, and I really think 7 sounds rational. I could live with 6:30, but 5:30 in the morning is ridiculous, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of work? There's a whole nother thing to talk about then. I mean, can we just put like a noise restriction on it? Like, that means all work, so they can't work inside at about 5:30 if they want to paint? Like, what's the,
That's
I
a
mean,
good
I say
point.
sun up, sun down, let her rip, tater chip, let's get it done. And then it's done.
How would you be able to include that for noise? Because it really is about the
Right.
noise.
Correct.
It's about the noise.
Yeah, I can jump
Says
in
right
here.
here.
Okay.
Just speak to maybe some of the concerns and where we came from with this proposal. So, again, I'm Alan Seeloff, Assistant Town Planner. We were contacted by the contractor for the medical center initially, please express a concern about limitations in the winter months, and that's really the focus of this. Was they wanted to make sure that they could work within some of their existing shifts in case it went beyond daylight a little bit as the sun goes down earlier in the winter months. Upon reviewing our code, per our code, it's really variable every day throughout the year. So that's why in the memo here, it explains per code today without any action, it's sunrise to sunset. So the proposal
For
to meet
weekdays.
the needs of the contractor for the medical center and then potentially for the St. Louis Landing project was just to establish base 12-hour kind of core hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., which they were thankful for, agreeable for in terms of meeting their kind of operational needs throughout the winter. The way the memo was written was to not necessarily further restrict anything that was already allowed by code later on in the year. So that's all that's drawing attention to, but that's not a new proposal in terms of the 5:30. That's just an example of what is already allowed by code.
Right. But
So-
this would change that. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., that's fine.
It sounds like
But
this
it's
is kind of an exception to the code, and then if we want to change the code, that's another.
Yeah, that
topic.
might be a bigger discussion or something
Yeah.
we can capture as part of a code update process.
Yeah, just to clarify, trustee Souls, this is not proposing changes to the code. It's
Okay.
simply allowing exceptions for these 2 specific projects.
So basically,
Okay.
they can work longer in the winter. That's what it's saying.
I see.
But I do think this is a topic that we should discuss because I do agree 5:30 in the morning. It's too early if you live next to it.
So, and again, it's between sunrise and sunset, whichever is greater on this exception. So that would still allow them to start working at 5:30 in the morning.
No, no.
Well,
7 a.m. to 7.
No, it
In the summer.
says,
Yeah, in the summer.
and between sunrise and sunset, whichever is greater.
Yeah.
Which is
So,
that's
it
the
does
sunrise
allow-
up until past 7.
Right.
We get 6 hours during December.
So we basically, if we pass this, we have until summer, till spring to change the code before, before they can start to work before 6:30 in the morning. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so we could pass these 2, then bring it up sometime this winter
Okay.
to say you can't start loud construction projects before 6:30 in the morning or something along those
Okay.
lines to change the code.
And that would require a code change. We can address later.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Again, I think the intention behind this, I have section 18.3.150 in our code up on the screen. So I think it is written kind of strangely in that obviously sunrise to sunset is variable throughout the year. That applies to weekdays. However, on weekends, it's 8 AM to 6:30 PM, a fixed time. The intention of these resolutions is again, just to allow in the winter, when sunrise to sunset is much shorter, allow a longer period of time for these construction activities to occur for these two specific projects. Now, obviously, as we move out of the winter into summer and longer days start happening, really the sunrise to sunset time is going to be what controls, not the 7 to 7 time.
Right.
But to your point, Trustee Souls, I do think this is something that could be revisited for a code amendment so that we are not just basing it off of sunrise to sunset throughout the year and we have a set, maybe we codify 7 to 7 on weekdays just throughout the year instead of sunrise to sunset. But we can certainly have that discussion further.
Sure. Okay.
The other thing I want to note is
Thank
that this only applies to construction on the outside of buildings and site work. So things like, you know, grading or utilities installation. So interior work, as you mentioned, is completely exempt from these hour restrictions.
I feel like 7 in, like, once again, there's just so many things like 7 PM in the summer is like middle of the day.
Right. And so
If you-
I don't have any problem with night
Right.
and the
You know-
evenings. It's the morning.
I think another way to handle this is approve it, but just put a duration on it.
But-
This is good for 6 months.
Or
You know, because if we're looking at the greater or lesser than, let's just say it's good for 6 months and we can either reapprove it come summertime or adjust the start time or adjust the code in the meantime, so.
And anyone can apply for this variance, right? Like not just the hospital, not just
Right.
St. Louis Landing.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyone
It
can
was,
ask for it.
yeah.
Totally fair, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a
Yeah.
motion to approve resolution 2024-11-01 and 02 for extended construction hours for these two projects.
Is there a second?
I second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, both motions carry. Good discussion though.
it's okay, but I do want to bring this back.
Yes.
We'll put that on staff's list for something to come out.
Yeah.
expires, we.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, just give
Yeah,
ourselves
winter's not-
a reset. point.
Right.
Allow them to
thank you.
proceed.
Right.
And we might try to bring that back though before it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a note. We'll bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if
Before,
the code will have time for it to take effect and those kind of things.
Right. Okay, we're moving on to ordinance 519, chapter 14 code update. Paul.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Matter before you tonight is ordinance 519, updates to chapter 14 of the Town Municipal Code. Some background, town staff did a line-by-line review of the current chapter 14 of the town code to remove inconsistencies, update the current industry standards, update international standard code references, general verbiage, clarification and simplification of language, allowance for electronic submittals versus paper submittals, addition of requirements codified by statute, warranty period extension to 2 years to be consistent with our new development improvement agreement, and updated 17 of the 44 details, and then added 2 new details, one being a cutoff wall to prevent groundwater flows, and then parking standards. Town staff recommends adoption of the chapter 14 code updates as included in the packet. No questions received from the town manager's distribution of the code updates required any changes to the draft presented to the Board of Trustees during the September 18th workshop. We did receive 2 questions regarding the code. One was the interpretation of the 25-foot maximum height on fixtures. And town interprets that as applying to freestanding fixtures and not lighting on decks or second floor, third floor of a building. And the second was a perceived conflict between chapter 14 and 19 with respect to landscaping requirements. And chapter 19 supersedes chapter 14 in that as part of the land use. And so when we will get that clear when chapter 19 gets a same sort of review.
Hey.
It's a very long chapter.
It's very long. then when you add 46 pages of details, it's
Yeah.
very long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for wading through it.
Mr. made this, or like what did the person, like a flagpole or?
Questions for Paul?
No.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
Any developers have any input on this? Are they all good with it?
Paul, I think this is the one we talked about at the last, like, we had this in room here. These are all the changes we talked about already.
Yeah, the workshop.
Yeah.
Built in.
Where's the workshop?
Cool. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 519, chapter 14 code update.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks. And now we'll move on to you again. Resolution 2024-1104, Clayton Court Waterline Contract.
Yes, the matter before the board is resolution 2024-1104, authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract with Phase Concrete for construction of the Clayton Court Phase 1 infrastructure, which includes the missing piece of water line in Clayton Court, relocation of the raw water line to make the art center developable, be able to use zero lot line on the back line, and replacing the failing emergency water line that we fixed twice last summer that runs out to Highway 40, and then upgrade the size of the line that goes from Clayton Avenue from the HTA building through Clayton Court to be a consistent. As part of the town's planned build out for Clayton Court, request for proposals was issued, resulting in 3 responsive bidders. That includes as I mentioned, the relocation of water lines, town municipal wells, raw water line, and water main. The budget for this is not to exceed 550,000. Based on the open bid process, Phase Concrete has submitted the lowest responsible bid, and staff recommends proceeding to contract with Phase Concrete. And attached within your packet is their bid documents.
Have they done work in this area before?
They did all of the underground utility work for the new hospital. They're currently doing the underground work, utility work for St. Louis Landing, and they did the utility work on the Fraser Elementary School expansion.
Okay.
And they did the middle school, I believe the middle school and high school work in Granby.
Great.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Any other questions, Brian?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-1104, Clayton Court Waterline Contract.
I'll second it.
Phase Concrete.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul. Moving on to resolution 2024-1105, Downtown Development 2025 Budget and Work Plan. Sarah, Dan's right.
Good evening. So tonight we're looking at the Fraser Downtown Development Authority 2025 work plan and budget. I wanted to provide you just kind of a general update as to where the DDA is at, their plans for 2025, which are still quite broad, and then seek your approval of the budget, which is required by Colorado revised statutes. So as you know, the DDA plan of development was adopted, approved by this board on October 16th, 2024. That document is meant to provide an overarching vision and strategies for downtown Fraser. It's meant to last the 30-year plus lifespan of the DDA. So really is much more broad in what is contained in that document. So that has been adopted. We also worked with the Ayers Consulting, who helped us out with that plan of development to create a Downtown Development Authority work plan that has a much more immediate focus and priorities, action steps. It is intended to be a malleable working document. And again, given that the DDA is just getting started, figuring out its footing, we do really envision that being kind of refined and adjusted, narrowed in its priorities as we move through 2025. But I did include that in the packet for your reference. So you can see some of the different areas that the DDA is looking at tackling in the year or a couple years to come. So as a reminder, the Downtown Plan of development had 5 core strategies, really focuses on downtown Fraser being a place where business spirit and creativity are intertwined. So finding ways to support the local economy and invest in local businesses and the arts, encourage entrepreneurship. Where mountain dreams are within our means, so focusing on promoting affordable and attainable housing projects, developing underutilized properties, commercial spaces, trying to keep them accessible for local businesses. Where the river flows through nature's heart, so focusing on development that is sustainable and really engaging with the natural environment, keeping all the reasons why so many of us love Fraser there long into the future, and a focus on those recreational opportunities, both within the downtown area as well as access to those opportunities outside of downtown Fraser. Oops, sorry. Where every journey is connected, so supporting multimodal transportation options, implementing streets that are connected and walkable, optimizing parking, improving stormwater drainage and infrastructure. And then lastly, downtown Fraser is where the soul of Fraser thrives. So really focusing on creating public gathering spaces, promoting events and programs, and implementing a tourism strategy, as well as just making sure that downtown remains the center of the Fraser community, both for tourists and residents alike. So with that, the work plan priorities, some of the top priorities were developing financial and investment strategies and policies. I think this was an area that some people kind of questioned when we were talking about the plan of development, of really seeing that there were some more clear criteria in terms of what the DDA was going to focus on and what they would prioritize in terms of making some of those investment decisions and deciding when to potentially partner with the developer to offer some incentives for different things that fit the vision. So focusing in on that, and the DDA is actually already working with Troy Bernberg from Northland Securities to develop those financial and investment policies. So we're going to be reviewing an initial draft of that document at our meeting next week on Tuesday. Another top priority that was identified in the work plan was a visioning for the Riverwalk District. As it so happens, we are engaged in a town comprehensive plan process where Cushing Terrell is working on that. So the DDA is going to be providing feedback on that coming up here in December, in terms of what Cushing Terrell has been working on. And then just kind of looking at different ways for district enhancements within the DDA boundaries and kind of community outreach and promotion. So before we jump into next year's budget, as a reminder, the board had approved $30,000 in seed money towards the DDA for this past year. 15,000 of that went to Ayers Consulting for that plan of development, as well as the work plan. We are anticipating that by the end of the year, we'll be at about 7,500 for financial consulting. Troy Bernberg's been working with our county assessor just to make sure we're getting an assessment that seems to make sense and is fair, as well as in developing those financial and investment policies for the DDA. So we have some clear guideline and criteria that we're moving forward with. We've worked with Butler Snow for legal services. So they've reviewed our bylaws and different formation documents, as well as the plan of development. And we're expecting at the end of the year to have, give or take, about $2,000 that'll roll over into next year from that initial pot of money. So with that, in your packet is the Fraser Downtown Development Authority budget message. And I'm going to skip to the revenues. Not coming up quite as I wanted it on my screen, so I apologize. So again, that seed money is about $2,000 that we're expecting to roll over. The tax increment estimate that we received from the assessor earlier in the fall was for about $65,288. The assessor does have the ability by statute to retain up to 1.5%. To cover their expenses. And so that gives us an amount just over 64,000. That number could still change. It's expected to be finalized later in December once the levies and everything like that have been finalized, as well as all the different assessments. So we're looking at total revenues expected to be a little over 66,000 that the DDA will have for next year. We have heard that this is great news for our DDA. A lot of DDAs are kind of in a waiting game in those initial years, particularly in smaller communities, waiting for any money to come in. So we're really pleased that we do have that to kind of play with and as a starting point. So the expenses that have been broken down include money for board members to have some professional development and really kind of become more versed in economic development, see what neighboring communities, peer communities are doing and what would be possible for Fraser. So we have about $1,200 for that. With our membership with Downtown Colorado Inc., we actually have access to a lot of free webinars and services. So that will be part of kind of that training and professional development, but it does allow us to have a fairly low budget line item for that. Associated lodging, meals, and travel are included there for conferences and things of that like. Professional services, this number may be higher than what is actually needed, but again, there's still some unknowns. So we do have $16,500 budgeted. This would cover ongoing legal and financial consulting, as well as other professional services that Downtown Colorado Inc. or other consultants might offer. Recognizing that the DDA has no full-time staff and just my humble self, who is new to downtown development authorities and economic development, I think it's important that we continue to leave room to get that strategic guidance from the experts in the field and make sure that the DDA is well positioned moving forward. As an example, Downtown Colorado Inc. has provided us a menu of options of different services, stakeholder workshops, trainings, things like that, that they could offer that we have not yet taken advantage of, as we focused on working with heirs and Northland Securities thus far for those different services that seemed most critical, but leaving room for that if there was any opportunities that presented itself to have a deal with a private developer, for example, those are things that would require kind of bond counsel or legal services, things like that. So making sure there's enough money budgeted for any of those opportunities that could present themselves. District enhancements, $34,000. This is meant to be a flexible fund dedicated to tangible improvements within the DDA district. This could be signage, facade improvements, public amenities, other initiatives that align with the DDA's goal. So again, we see what this actually looks like kind of narrowing as we move through the work plan and really see what different opportunities present themselves. This could be potential grant matches if those opportunities exist in the year to come, or they could be direct investments by the DDA. Community outreach. This could include marketing of the downtown area, promotional materials, event sponsorships, business support networking, and different initiatives aimed at fostering a vibrant downtown Fraser. Miscellaneous 5,000. These are funds reserved for unanticipated needs or expenses. So this brings us to $65,100. We do have about 1,200 in reserves. This is a number that I think the DDA would look to grow as they do have more revenue sources. But given that it's the first year in consulting with Troy Bernberg, we felt this was an appropriate number to set a little bit aside, but look to kind of grow that as there's more revenues to play with moving forward. So we did seek to maintain some budget flexibility as we move forward, again, trying to figure out exactly what opportunities make the most sense and where the DDA can have the most impact. Again, per Colorado revised statutes, the board is required to approve the proposed budget each year. If there were, significant amendments to this, it would come back before the board. But otherwise, we would continue to update the board. I know there's been a request for potentially quarterly updates, and the DDA is on board with that. So we can bring back that work plan and kind of show you how the DDA is moving through it and where exactly that budget money is going kind of each quarter as we move through 2025. Moving right along. So this is what that budget will look like within the larger town budget. These are all the numbers that I did just discuss in Lori's lovely format. The DDA has approved this, so you do have that resolution in your packet as well as a resolution for you to approve it. And then for the sake of time, I wasn't planning to go too into detail into the work plan, which I realize is printed out very small. I think you have better luck looking at it on a screen where you can enlarge it, but I am happy to answer any questions. But again, finance and investment policy is definitely an area of top priority, but a lot of that is coming out of that initial seed money, so it doesn't show up as prominently in the budget. We have areas for event support coordination and kind of developing a policy around what that might look like. Looking at a property acquisition policy, which may come out a little bit in that investment policy that the DDA is working on now. Visioning for the downtown Riverwalk area and other areas throughout downtown. A focus on community facilities and spaces. Access and mobility, so really kind of improving pedestrian access around downtown, focusing in on partnerships around multimodal transportation, looking at wayfinding, things of that nature. Community branding and marketing. DDA constituent communications, so how are we communicating with businesses, residents, marketing partnerships, and then looking at kind of future staff and budget needs, board recruitment. So those are things that kind of fall under just operations and administration. Seeking out outside funding sources and what might that might look like. And so that's kind of the gist of the work plan. And again, I think it is really ambitious for what the DDA will be able to do in the next year or two. But looking at that as some potential immediate action steps and then really kind of narrowing in on where we feel the DDA can have the most impact. Okay. Any questions?
I do. Looking at the budget, it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I do see one thing that I'm not sure it belongs on there, but it's your time. That's an in-kind donation from the town. I imagine once we've created the DDA, we're on a different plane. Should we be tracking your time? I can see it being useful in grants as a match in kind. I can see just, maybe the town's subsidizing, well, we're starting with the 30,000 seed, but maybe it's 50,000 we're giving in your time. So I think, I guess,
Yeah, that's a
I
great
don't
point.
know the quite the value of it yet, but you're a loner. And
I'll be
I-
awaiting my $100,000 bonus at the end of the
Well,
year.
But I mean, I think it also sets them up for success to know what the reality
Yes.
of your time is and those kind of things. So I think we may not find value, but we might find a whole lot of value in knowing what you're dedicating. And maybe it's opportunity loss on our side as well. So I'd like to, maybe know or track that a little bit.
Yeah, well, two things on that note. That's actually part of the work plan. There is a line item in the work plan for tracking staff time and determining when they need and are ready and have the financial ability
That's what
for a
PD
full-time staff member. Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of thinking about grant applications and things like that. It can be useful. And then the board will also, coming before you, will be renewal of the IGA that was signed with the DDA, between the DDA and the town. And so the only difference between that initial IGA that was signed is that they're not asking for any additional seed money. But it does include my time and additional staff time, because in addition, Caitlin and Antoinette have been lending their services as clerks.
2 or 3 years, there might be a reimbursement or
Yeah.
that relationship might develop.
Yeah, I think that's very valid.
Okay.
I mean, is that part of your job description? What percentage?
There's this other duties as assigned. So
Projects and initiatives.
we've spoken with several downtown development authorities, and a lot of these DDAs, a lot of and especially in western slope communities and smaller towns, they are staffed by town staff.
Oh, sure. But
And it's a very normal ramp up process. I completely agree. I think we can, if it's not already covered in the IGA, we can cover that in the IGA. And even when we go to that IGA is an annual approval, Sarah.
Yes.
So when
Yeah.
we go to bring that forward every year, we can provide a recap section that kind of captures your hours throughout the year.
and we don't need 15 minutes. Or,
Well, yeah,
it's
like
not a time card. It's
0.1.
just
Yeah, and
estimate.
we've had discussions with this, getting all the amount of work that Sarah did, really ramping up everything from the DDA committee, subcommittee, and getting to the ballot process and the public outreach and her time on KFFR. I mean, this was identified as a priority by the board.
That was all us, yeah, but
Yeah.
I think now that the DDA is in existence, it's a different animal and it's a different,
And what we're anticipating is a ramp up time period for Sarah's time, because it is a lot of work on Sarah's time.
Mhm.
And I think capturing that with the IGA, we can look at, you know, every year that IGA is about how we will work with the DDA. And if it's getting to the point where like, okay, they've got some funds, they need to be looking at how they can maybe hire somebody independently and pay them for
They
that,
might
for this
need
time.
Sarah to do other projects.
Yeah, and Sarah does a good job of balancing these things, but there is a ramp up period to make this successful.
Do the board members get paid?
No,
No,
Okay.
statute does not allow them to receive any compensation.
no
I mean, my only comment, the reserves seem pretty low. That's,
Yeah,
But there isn't like there's,
They don't have
yeah,
any.
they're not gonna have a
That's
water
something
main
we're
break and
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to, you know, they don't have any emergency thing.
well, I'm just saying, you know, keeping
We
some
never
more in
thought
reserve,
we'd
but the resolution that was passed, there was one abstention. Why did someone abstain from the resolution?
he didn't, I don't think he meant to abstain. He was attending virtually and not available when the vote was taken. So there
He didn't
were,
really abstain. He just
He didn't.
didn't vote.
Didn't chime in.
yeah,
I'm just
I
wondering.
mean, that was
that
our,
Position to something in there.
no, and I believe, Nick, are you still online? He's actually signed off on this letter. He was, our party that abstained, so,
He's abstaining again.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, well, here you go. I'm just curious if there was some objection that somebody had to something in here.
Nick's our treasurer.
no, yeah, Nick's the treasurer, and he had to step off when we were doing the vote. He was attending virtually. As I understand it, I can let Nick speak for himself. But again, he signed off on the budget message, so I think that means he's in favor.
Absolutely. I don't know exactly like what this whole budget will be looking like in the near future because there's a lot of grants that might be available to us, but we're pretty much like signed up as of right now on this. I agree to everything. So yeah.
And Lori Cannon, our DDA chair, is also here if you have any questions or you want to say anything, Lori.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys? All right.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2024-1105 DDA budget and work plan.
Hey.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Good budget, guys.
Great,
Thanks,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Nick.
All right, moving on to resolution 2024-1106, St. Louis Landing Limited Scope of Development Improvement Ratification. Michael Brack.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. So what's before you tonight is a development improvement agreement. After consultation, a development improvement agreement for a limited scope of work that will take place and is taking place on St. Louis Landing regarding the installation of water sewer infrastructure. What we've provided them is a 75-day work window in that DIA. That's approximately $1 million in costs. This is in lieu while we're currently negotiating and finalizing the development, the master development agreement with Mountain Affordable Housing LLC. Again, Phase is doing that work. They are on site. Following consultation with our land use attorney, and speaking with staff and our public works director, Paul Johnson, we felt comfortable with this and looking to ratify this. Then following individual conversations that I had with I think most of you that I could get a hold of, you were all in favor of this. So what this really does is they're obviously doing work out there right now. This does set up the project go ahead and start, which I think we're all glad to see. And second of all, it sets up the construction schedule so they can begin framing, get a lot of that framing completed before we're really in the heart of winter next year. So that sets us up really well to save some costs there, build in some efficiencies, and get the project going. So they do have this limited scope of approval. And what this is ratifying that agreement that was entered into between the town of Fraser and Mountain Affordable Housing Development for this limited scope of work that was executed on October 22nd earlier this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that we have. That development improvement agreement And the staff briefing is included in the packet tonight. And yeah, really just work to get this going, and we don't have any obligation to the developer if something that we're not suspecting right now, but if something were to come awry with the master agreement, we don't have any obligation to follow through with these guys. It allows them to complete work with this contractor through phase that can be picked up in the spring. And they're looking at getting as much of this done here in the next by the end of the year as possible before the conditions get too hard to work in. So all this work is not connecting to any existing water or sewer mains in town. It's just on-site work there at St. Louis Landing.
Any questions about that, guys?
I move to approve resolution 2024-1106, a resolution by the town board for the town of Fraser ratifying the limited scope development improvement agreement between the town of Fraser and Mountain Portable Housing Development for the installation of water and sewer infrastructure.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
I really
Okay.
like the heavy equipment up on the hill too.
I know.
Yeah.
I love it. It just like makes my day.
I got a picture of them all lined up.
I love it. So I know, so, you know, you gotta walk up and down it to get in it. It's like, just like that little extra, like, hubby loves it. It's great. It's cool.
That's great. All right, moving on to updates. Board, do you have any updates?
Pedestrian lights, everyone knows they're in, right?
Mm.
You guys seen them
Wow.
I haven't seen them yet.
today?
They're working
Nice.
good?
Yeah.
Good.
That's great.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Today before the board meeting, they were flashing. I was like, yes. Yeah,
All right.
the streetlights fixed too. Thanks, Paul.
Ski area opens on Friday. Excited about that. And ski train is going to run, is it 5 days a week? And have a stop
Starting
at
in January.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
No,
Sunday,
5
Monday,
days, 5.
5 days a week. And it'll stop in Fraser. So that's great news.
Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday,
Yep.
Wednesday.
$39 on the weekends, 29 on the
I think it's Tuesday,
on the
Wednesday.
bookends.
Amber stuff
Right
here,
on.
they should know that too.
Mhm.
Get those businesses to know that, you know, let it go along.
Yep.
That's great.
Go for it.
All right, one update that I have is we have confirmed a groundbreaking ceremony at St. Louis Landing on November 21st. I'll be sending out an update on this, but we just solidified this today. This works for a lot of our DOLA reps and people that we want to have there on site. So that'll be November 21st on site at St. Louis Landing from at 2 p.m. And we'll be likely having that from 2 to 3. Maybe we get done a little sooner. I'm not sure. But following that, we'll actually have a little bit of a little celebration at Simple Coffee. And we'd love to see you all there if you're available.
We're playing King of the Mountain.
Go on up there. I asked them which one got to drive that up there. If they had to draw straws because it looked risky, or if they drew straws because it looked fun. So they said it was actually a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I thought we would do 2 weekends.
And the Tucker, do we have a street sign for that? Like the street signs there for that?
We're working on it.
Or like, how's that
We got
going?
one. Yeah, we've been focusing on the hard hats, the golden shovels, and the street sign.
Street sign?
Street sign.
Excellent.
And are we gonna talk to the paper about getting a little article about it, or do you want?
Yeah, well, I'll reach out to everybody. We just solidified this date today, so we'll get Sky High out there.
Okay. Will they do an article on Edna, do you know? It's kind of important.
It's a good story.
It's a great story. Maybe I could have her family reach out, or someone could have Katie, you have Jeff's number?
What's that?
To do like, have the Tucker family do a little, like, if they wanna talk to the paper about.
Oh,
maybe-
yeah. Jeff's all over it. Love to
Okay.
do that.
You wanna let them know,
Yeah. Well, when the time comes.
or whatever?
Who would you like me to relay
Like a
that
picture
to?
of it or something? Huh?
Who would you like me to relay that to Sky High?
I don't know.
If you want to provide me with her information or
Yeah,
whoever
you can provide me
contact, I
with the
can.
lady
if
That's
they're
like the
interested.
family of her, and then they can
Yes.
talk to her, or call her, or whatever.
Yeah, if you want to forward me her
Yeah,
information,
yeah, yeah.
I'll get that to him.
Okay.
So we'll tell.
That's great.
Right? Antoinette?
So I just have an update about the election. The ballot question that Fraser had to move our regular elections from April and even numbered years to November has passed. It passed, so a total number of votes was 387 votes. There were 275 for the ballot question and 112 against.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so we did good. And just kind of a fun, just a fun fact, overall, Grant County voted at, it was about 58% of the county, people eligible to vote that received ballots. I think that's kind of fun.
That's great.
So in the future, in the near future, I'm thinking probably January, I will be providing a resolution to amend the terms of the current board to meet that new election in November of 2026.
Congrats to another 6 months, everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If not permanent.
Permanent history right here.
If there's no more elections, we might be here forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, man. And the lodging tax passed as well for the county.
Great.
So good news. All right, with that, we'll enter into executive session.
Okay, I move to enter into executive session for the purposes of determining positions relative to the matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and for instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6-4024E regarding the Joint Facilities Oversight Committee agenda review to include Town Manager Michael Brack, Wastewater Superintendent Joe Fuqua, Finance Director Lori Waters, and Public Works Director Paul Johnson.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we are going to go into this executive session. We'll take a 5-minute break, I think, before, and then we will just adjourn the meeting afterwards, so we won't be rejoining. So thanks for all the participation today.